Hey, just go struggle for a little bit, you know?
People lost their mind.
We were behind on bills, credit cards were built up.
I would blow it and the fire would go over here, so I came over here and the fire would go over here. This is the oldest red hickory tree in the world.
Well, you think like it can't be that hard. Why do you like wood so much? You obviously have a fascination with wood.
Yeah. So I grew up in a furniture store, and
Like you were,
no,
like lived in a furniture store.
So this over here, Occoquan, my mom worked at a furniture store in a small village in Virginia called Occoquan.
Okay.
And she worked there for a long time, and even before she started working there. So I was introduced to solid wood furniture. I was introduced to just kind of like handmade stuff. And then, I mean, it wasn't until I was 29 that I actually started working with wood. But, you know, there was a base and kind of a appreciation for kind of, you know, this is what a nice piece of, you know, handmade furniture looks like. And I didn't know how to make it, and it wasn't until I was 29 and my wife asked, hey, you should buy us, or you should make us something.
Yeah.
And, you know, a friend of mine at church helped, and in our back patio we made a table. So,
wow.
And honestly, like when you make something for the first time, it's addicting.
Yeah.
I mean, like,
well, it's got to be rewarding.
Oh, and like I can look back on a day and maybe I only like cut these up, but like I can look back on the day and like I did something.
Yeah, right.
And maybe you sanded something, maybe you stained something, maybe you know, started a project from start to finish, and you know, you have that to look at.
Right.
I mean, there's an accomplishment that is addicting.
Right. Well, there's also like a sense of, so like somebody buys that product, or it's in somebody's like shop or their store or whatever, there's a sense of like that somebody else is also appreciating that piece of work.
Yeah.
Which has got to be super rewarding.
Oh, and the more I do it, the more, and everything I have has a moose branded on it.
Yeah.
And I'll have people like, oh, I had no idea that you made, you know, the Chaney's a table, or I had no idea that you did all this work for this, you know, coffee shop or restaurant, or, you know, like, you know, it's that little Easter egg.
Right.
And, you know, I have a brand that goes on underneath that has like my name and information on it. But that moose, you know, for a lot of people, it's not going to mean anything, but, you know, for some people, it's going to mean like, oh, that's McGinnis made.
Yeah. Well, you know what's cool is like you're creating something that's almost, it's like a legacy that you're creating. Like I'm creating a video that somebody might watch, or even if it's like a wedding video, like they enjoy it, but down the road it's kind of just like, here's you know, but like this is a piece of like something that's going to stick within his family, might be passed down generations and generations. I mean, I've got a what's it called, an ashtray from you, and I mean, that thing sits there, and that thing will probably be handed down one day. That's pretty neat.
And you know, that's when you're working on something, and you know, there's moments and there's people that don't love what you've made, or you know, maybe they have it for 5 years and maybe they outgrow it, or they just change styles and they get rid of it, and you were like, oh, like that was forever. Like that was supposed to be.
That's true.
Yours, you know, that you passed down to your kid, or passed, you know. Yeah. And that's
gonna be hard.
and I mean, videos and photos, and I mean, especially when you lose someone, you know, there's value in that. And, you know, especially to hear that person's voice. Yeah. It's like at a wedding, and, you know, you have a father-daughter dance, and, you know, you're dancing with your, you know, significant other, or your mom, or her dad. Yeah. And you get to see that video. I mean, that's true. There's value in that, and there's healing. Or you'd be like, I don't even remember half these people. Like, I watch it, like, with my parents, and they're like, what was his name? And he was like in the wedding. That's funny. There's definitely value in you know, and wood is, especially a lot of the wood that I use is old. And to me, just like a photo is There was a Netflix movie called Kodachrome. I don't know if you've ever watched it. Go and watch it. Okay. It's Jason Sudeikis, Elizabeth Olsen. It's a really, really good movie. It's about Kodachrome, which is a type of film.
Okay.
And there was only one place in Kansas that was going to develop this, and then they were done after this. Mm-hmm. So all of these photographers that were still shooting on Kodachrome were going to this lab or like pharmacy in Kansas, and they were all, and that was it.
Yeah.
And one of the characters said, a photo is history made tangible. And to me, that's what old wood is especially like a lot of the stuff that I have that maybe has a story, especially to where we live in North Carolina, has a mill history, which, I've got a bunch of wood outside that was like old flooring for a mill in Kannapolis, in Concord.
Yeah.
And that built this area. Mm-hmm. This area wouldn't exist if it weren't for cannon mills. Mm-hmm. And so like that right there is kind of the reason why Concord exists, Kannapolis exists, even Harrisburg. And to me, that's part of our history. Yeah. And, same with a lot of the other wood that we have. Like I know that, it was cut down in this year, and if it was cut down in this year and based on the grain, it's over 100 years old, well, that means that it was, turn of the century, like 1800s, 1900s, and, what has happened in the world in those, and to me that's neat.
That's neat. So you just have like a wood dealer? Like you... like you guy
well, like I buy my new wood, this like shiny and new stuff that, just... to me, kind of boring. Yeah. I have a lumber yard that I go to in Concord called Klutz Lumber, and they celebrated 100 years last year. So, and they're awesome.
Yeah.
And I buy all of my, what's called dimensional lumber, which is just like straight boards from them.
Like 2x4s, stuff like that.
Yeah. And they have an incredible selection. But then I'll hop on like Facebook Marketplace and I'll find some, usually the guy doesn't even have Facebook, like it's his niece or his daughter, and they were like, Cindy put it on the Facebook, and then I put my phone number on there. Like I talked to this guy on Saturday, and he's 70, and then his 90-year-old uncle in a wheelchair comes out, and we just had this, awesome conversation.
Yeah.
Just about wood.
Yeah.
And it like, he was like, I remember when your dad had cut this tree down. Wow. And he was 2 years old. The 70-year-old guy was 2 years old when this wood was, tree was cut down and milled. And
that's crazy.
And he said, I remember it was at least 3 feet across or more. And and I think that will be a relationship that I continue, because he had a bunch of old wood, which is hard to find. And you want to buy it from Steve in Statesville and not buy it from some like dealer in Noda, or because they'll snatch it up and they'll triple the price. And
so are there like chains or big companies that are buying old wood and reselling it basically?
There was a place in Noda, and I don't know if they're still doing it, where they weren't buying old wood, but if a tree fell down, they would get it. And it was supposed to be like sustainable. It was like, this came down naturally. This was not a mill or they didn't cut this down to, just for this tree. And which is cool, but then, it's Noda, so they're going to charge the absolute world on it. So we there are lumber yards and there are places that sell old stuff, but it's few and far between. Just because there's risk in old wood.
What's that? What?
Like bugs and most people, and some won't even work with old wood just because Like I almost lost an eye because of a nail in an old board. I wasn't wearing my glasses like I should.
Yeah.
I tried to cut it, and there was a nail that I didn't see, and so now I have a metal detector. It's just like a little wand that I can put over it. So every time, even with glasses on, I'll put the wand on and make sure that, I mean, even bullets. Okay. Like I found bullets in wood. I found obviously nails, and I mean, and it's crazy because you have a great big old tree, but imagine someone put a nail in it in 1920, and then the tree was cut down in 1970. Well, that nail is, a foot in or something. Yeah. So it just takes one nail to ruin your day.
Wow. So what's like? I mean, you've obviously almost taken an eye out. What's like the closest situation you've had? Or have you had, I mean, you got all your fingers and everything? Or you...
I almost cut this finger off.
Really?
It was a biscuit joiner, which is this tool right here.
Okay.
And then I cut this back in March over here. I was making sourdough knives, and it slipped and cut. Yeah. I've gotten allergic reactions that have put me in the
really?
There's wood, especially like South American style, like type stuff that is like the oils are just nasty. And so there was a lace wood that I cut it up. I made actually the Avett Brothers frame over there in the corner.
Okay.
And then the next day I woke up and my forearms were like swollen. I looked like Will Smith from Hitch, where like my ears were swollen, my eyes, and I mean, and I looked over at Allison and I was like, I think I'm fine. And it, like we were going to church and she was like, no. It's like people are not going to be okay with it. Like what you got going on? And so I had to go to the emergency room and get get a shot.
Yeah.
And I still have that wood, and it like I reorganized last week, and I saw it. I was like, all right, you stay in there. And nothing like that. No, other than sometimes you'll get like walnut is really fine, and so if you don't wear a mask, it can be irritating.
Yeah.
But. Nothing terrible as of yet. Not shop teacher losing fingers bad, but it's fine.
So what's like the sketchiest? Have you had any sketchy situations where like you've got somebody selling some like cool wood, and then you show up and it's like just weird? Or no? Are all the wood sellers pretty?
I mean, they're usually like old men.
Right. Yeah.
I've not gotten taken, but there's been a couple that like the history was really, really cool, and then they just kind of disappeared.
Yeah.
And like I was super excited about this piece that they had, and
right. Yeah.
And like we have the old Philip Morris cigarette plant here in Concord, and it's closed and been closed for a while. And I had a woman reach out, and she wanted, and then. She just disappeared, like, not sketchy in the sense of, like, I've been taken, but, I've had some bad people and had some situations that weren't ideal, but not.
Gotcha. Before wood, when I first found out about you, you were the photographer. Like, you were, it seemed like you were like, we go to church together, it seemed like you were like the church photographer.
Yeah.
So was that like what you started with was photography, or?
Yeah.
Why photography?
I started in college and enjoyed it, and then I traveled around the world and worked got to experience a lot of really, awesome things, and go to Hawaii and take photos of, surfing competitions, and got to go to a lot of, professional sporting events and do, the photos for teams, and worked for an organization called Dream on 3 for a while. They do sports dreams for kids with like physical and developmental disabilities, which was, so fun.
Yeah.
And then...
I didn't know this. Like you were like a world traveling photographer.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
And Then I did weddings, and I did other things that, are great in your 20s.
Right.
And then you get to 30 and you're like, I don't want to be here at 10 o'clock on a Saturday. I'd rather be watching TV on my couch.
Yeah.
And then in 2015, I started woodworking, and I think a lot like what we were talking about, where it gave me this accomplishment.
Yeah.
And it replaced a lot of what photography gave me.
Okay.
And I was getting older, and I wanted to spend time with my, wife, and I wanted to stay at home, and I didn't. And then COVID happened, and it was just like, if I was still doing just photography, I mean, I would have been.
Yeah.
I mean, we all know people who were just doing, photography or videography, and didn't have anything to do. Maybe they picked up odd jobs. Maybe they, fill in the blank.
Well, luckily, during that time, I mean, obviously, a lot of my stuff shut down, but I had a couple companies that were still running. Like, for example, a dog training company. They're still training dogs, and so I still had content to edit, stuff like that. So, thankfully, I ended up being in a blessed situation, but not a lot of people did.
I mean, I work with a lot of production companies, and they all but folded. Mm-hmm. And so that's when I not really took off, but that's when I just kind of put my nose down. And Allison was working, but I was like, is she going to have a job in 2 months? Mm-hmm. Is she going to get paid her next paycheck? Yeah. So I was working sun up to sundown and kind of squirreling everything away, not knowing if there was going to be, her paycheck coming in.
Yeah.
And we did fine, and the Lord provides, and we were incredibly thankful for the that time, but not everyone was as fortunate.
Yeah. So do you still do photography? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Still not as much.
Yeah.
I don't travel.
Yeah.
Haven't done a sporting event in 3 or 4 years, and then I haven't done I don't work for the organization anymore, but they're still kicking it. They're a great organization, do great things for kids.
Yeah.
I just do church stuff now.
Yeah.
And then every once in a while, someone will ask me to take family photos or something like that.
So was entrepreneurship so for me, entrepreneurship was pretty much always on, that was my route. Like I said, in middle school, high school, I never wanted to work for somebody else. And so, which at some point I did, but entrepreneurship was my route that I wanted to take. Was that the same for you, or?
My mom mentions it all the time. Because I told her when I was 10 years old that I never wanted to sit behind a desk.
Yeah.
And my mom and dad both, went to college. Mom went to Kansas State. Dad went to West Point. Served in the Army for 25 years. And I thought, as a kid, that's where I wanted to go. I wanted to go to West Point. I wanted to, pursue, that. And not that the military is sitting behind a desk by any means. Right. There are people that do that, but there's just as many people, kicking down doors and fixing trucks and, lifting things and moving things. And I mean, it's a huge organization of people that, does a lot of really neat things. And but I don't know at what point I just didn't abandon that idea, but realized that wasn't for me.
Okay.
And art was definitely a part of my story. And
were you creative? But
not in a making things way. It was in drawing and making things and with clay and stuff like that. And then it just woodworking was never part of the equation, but being creative was.
Right.
And so I went to college just like everyone did. I feel like it's a lot more accepted today in 2024 than it was in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
We were part of this generation of college is the only path.
Right.
College is, if you don't go to college, what are you going to do with your life?
Right,
You're going to, in the words of my father, you're going to be digging ditches.
Yeah.
And so I went to college and, went in 2005. And I think that it was important to me, and I don't regret it. And I talk to my wife all the time because, one of the things I talk about is I wish I'd found woodworking before I was 29. I wish I was 19. I wish I was, younger than that.
Yeah.
But, that wasn't my story.
Right.
And so I wish I had, done something like graphic design or something in college. I did advertising, public relations, and didn't even finish. Got pretty close to finishing, and then got married, and it was like I don't want to, nothing. I don't want anything that the degree can give me.
Okay.
I don't want to sit at a desk. I don't want a job where, I have to have that degree. I want to, and I didn't know what that was. So I finished in 2009 and did a lot of just weird jobs.
Yeah.
And, it was taking pictures, but in the off, I was building cell phone towers, and I was just doing production work for companies in the Charlotte area. And I attended so many dance recitals, filming them for companies. And so I did a lot of jobs that I didn't want. And I was and there was a lot of doubt, and there was a lot of, what am I doing with my life? And then I found woodworking, and it really gave me purpose.
Okay.
And it really was that thing for me.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I would have found that otherwise, if it was, not for those years of not knowing and not having no money. And having no, and Allison wasn't making very much money. I wasn't making much money.
Yeah.
And then this just kind of happened.
Yeah. Did you ever feel like it was too late?
Woodworking is one of those things that old guys do. And I'm the young guy.
Yeah.
I go to the lumber yard, or you're part of these Facebook groups, or they're all old white men. Once in a while you'll find someone that's not old and white, but more than that. And that was the thing that drives me crazy about woodworking in life and in general is I got to buy this tool. And then I'm going to buy this tool. And once I get everything set up exactly how I want it, then I'm going to die. And I'm never going to get to use it. And, there was a situation. I have a friend that's a teacher at Cannon School. And he was contacted by this couple who he had, the most beautiful woodworking shop. It was probably $50,000 worth of just tools. And then his wife got sick, and he never really made anything off this equipment, and then gave it to the school. And I just think, how sad that is to, have, worked so hard your whole life doing something else, and then this is your retirement plan. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, it's gone. Obviously in his situation, he didn't pass away, but his wife, got sick, and he couldn't do it anymore. And so woodworking is one of those things that you'll never master just because there's so many aspects to it. There's wood turning, and there's furniture making, and there's more crafts and whittling, and then there's building houses, and the list goes on and on and on. And every time I feel like I've got not it cornered or understand it, something else comes, and you're like, oh, that's really cool. Yeah. I want to try that. Yeah. And especially Instagram and social media opens this world of, this is what other people are doing. Look what they're doing. And that to me is, you'll never master woodworking. And so it's a lifelong pursuit. And like I said, I wish I could have found it in my, teens. Yeah, right. But I found it a lot earlier than most people.
Yeah. Well, it says something that you're pursuing it. Like I said, a lot of people that I've heard come across something, man, I wish I would have done this. I wish it's too late. I'm too old for this. Yeah. They don't make that jump, but obviously you made that jump, and so
And we don't have kids, and I know that stops a lot of people. And even the friend who helped me build my table that kind of started my love with woodworking, he builds, one thing a year, and he'll, pull the tools out, and his, son, daughter will help him. But more than not, he has a 9 to 5, and that's his.
Yeah.
I have the opportunity to make more in a day than most people will make in a year. And in a week, I can turn out, last week I had like a big cabinet for a business, and then an end table, 2 stools, and a side table, and then kind of like a sofa table.
Yeah.
And, that was 4 days of work. And that's not what, he can do.
Right.
And not to say that that's bad, and you should, have a side hustle and, make little things. And honestly, it gives a lot of people, not purpose, but, gets them out of the office and gets them excited. So,
how long were you doing photography up until you started wood?
2008.
Okay.
So my grandfather, who's back here, John Campbell was his name. He always had a camera in his hand.
Yeah.
Never professional. It was just something he loved, taking photos. And so I started taking pictures in 2008, and that was volunteered for everything at the university I went to. And honestly, that was more of an education than I got in the classroom. Was just doing.
Right.
I was taking pictures for the yearbook, the radio station, the university. I would just volunteer. I want to do that. And, I would do a football game, and then I would do a, press conference, and then I would do a portrait session with, some club on campus, and then I would do, and every day was completely different.
Yeah.
And I got so excited about that.
That's the best way to learn. I couldn't, I was in college for a year and a half, and learned nothing. And part of that's my fault. I didn't pay attention, or show up to class. But I learned so much just going out. Once I decided photography was what I wanted to do, I just went out and did it and learned it. And as little as I knew from the beginning, even just how to work a camera. I watched a couple. Thankfully, we're in a world now where you can just flip on YouTube and learn. YouTube University. And I just listened to a video, went and did it. Listened to another video, went and did it, and just learned along the way. And there's still things I'm learning now. And and then there's the business side of things, which you can't really go to. Even if, I went to school for business because that was just one of the broad things that you can do. And didn't learn a thing about how to run a business. And so, but actually
it changes every year.
Right, yeah.
And social media runs small business now.
Yeah.
And when I went to college, Instagram was in its absolute infancy. Facebook was the same thing.
Yeah.
TikTok didn't exist. All of these things. If you went back in time and talked to other woodworkers, content creation was what?
Well, yeah, right.
What are you talking about?
Right.
And now I wouldn't exist without social media.
Yeah.
Because I can finish something, put it up.
Yeah.
Austin sees it. Oh, didn't and you pass it on to someone else. And I have followers, around the country and around the world. And then I'll make a handle for a pocket knife, and I'll get into some EDC world, and then I'll get a bunch of followers off of that, or I'll get in with Cheerwine or something, and they'll pay me for content and stuff, and it's just the world is really your oyster now, and you don't have to leave your house to be seen around the world.
So talk about that more. You've had some pretty cool collaborations with people I've seen. expand on that? Like, I'm at Cheerwine, for example.
I got super excited about holiday Cheerwine.
Yeah.
And so I would like post videos about it. And then Cheerwine reached out and they were like, would you want to be an ambassador for Cheerwine?
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah,
for sure.
100%. Let's do that.
Right.
I don't know what that means, but yeah, for sure. And so I'll make just content about, and they don't put like rules on it. They're like, hey, you got to say this and it's got to look this way. And, you know, and, you know, they'll give me Cheerwine and, you know, give me clothes. And I mean, it's, and there's been things that, and I've got a friend that has a sponsorship with Carhartt, and he's got a sponsorship with, you know, like tool brands and stuff like that. And I was like, how did you do that? And he goes about the approach and like, oh, I made a formal inquiry and I made, you know, calls to this person. And I was like, oh, that's a lot of work.
Yeah.
And
so do you do that or?
No, and I know I should.
Yeah.
But at the end of it, I'm here to make things out of wood. I'm not here to make content. And I wish I had an Austin. I wish I could, pay someone to come in and be like, hey, Tuesday I'm going to be making this. If you come at like 9, we can shoot this and then we can put together. And I know my following would grow and I know my, I would probably sell more and do more, but it's like, is that why I'm doing it?
Right.
And because, I mean, as you well know, if you make something, we have to position the camera there, and then I'll make a cut, and then I have to position the camera here, and then I, just casually I'm walking through, and how long would this process take if I just did it versus if I filmed me doing it?
Yeah.
And I mean, it looks effortless.
Right.
When you do it, you'll be like, oh, that was an hour of that little sequence of making sure that it was in focus and making sure that, the camera was set up in the way that I like it. Maybe I'm going to shoot it twice or 3 times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, even like working with Justin, the channel that I do editing for, I mean, his day probably takes twice as long just because he's going around. And it also depends on how dedicated, you can go as simple as just, let's just set the camera right here, let me do something real quick.
Yeah.
But he'll go as far as to let me set the camera way out there, get a cool angle, and then walk back this way, do my thing, walk back that way, go get, So it's there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes in content creation. But so you've done, I mean, you're into content creation. You do a lot of...
Because I know I have to, and I enjoy it, and so often it's not necessarily like woodworking, but it's like...
Yeah, you do a lot of fun, just little...
Silly videos.
Yeah. Is that just for fun, or is it to try to put yourself out there? Or, I mean, you're already out there.
Yeah. I know that if people enjoy the content that you're making, they'll also see the things that I'm making.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily going to be, it could also, I've had so many people, this person has followed me forever, but they've never bought anything.
Yeah.
But they've told their sister or their coworker or their, neighbor, and they've bought things.
Yeah.
And you have no idea, who's watching and who's... and when we're excited about something, we're going to tell people, oh, I got this new coffee. You got to try it out. Right. It's made by these, local firefighters. They're, it's, made across the street. And now, because I'm excited about it, I'm telling you about it. Right. And, it's guerrilla marketing in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And so if making a silly video is going to, get someone to watch, what I'm making, may it be a table or maybe,
Yeah. Well, it keeps your name just in people's minds, right?
Because you have to make content, as every single day.
Yeah.
And because your guy puts up a video every day, right?
Yeah, every day. Yep.
Which and I imagine there's people who maybe listen to it on the way to work, or people who watch it on their lunch breaks every day, or And it's probably part of a lot of people's every single day.
Yeah.
And if they didn't do that, and like I've got podcasts that every Monday I listen to this podcast,
right.
and every Wednesday, and if it weren't for, my day would be thrown off.
Right.
Like there's been a couple days where I've like gotten my phone out and it's like 8 a.m. and be like, where is it? And then it shows up at 9 a.m. and I'm like, all right, guys, like we have an agreement. I don't pay for this service, but you need to know that.
It becomes routine. Like when you pull your phone out, like this is what I expect to be doing.
And I know it's a ton of work, and I know it costs money. And, it's And I mean, I can't imagine making, because his videos, how long are they?
They can vary, but like they tend to be around like the 10-minute mark. Plus or minus. Occasionally they'll be long videos.
What does the edit look like? Is it a long, or is it more just culling footage and putting something?
Yeah, so he what he does is he just goes throughout his day, films stuff, and it's not just one continuous footage. It's multiple clips. It's typically 100 or less clips, maybe 120 if it's a long one. And I just go through, and it's in an order, so it's fairly simple for me. I just go in, clip each little bit, throw it in a timeline, and then once everything's in the timeline, chop it all up, and then throw some music on it. And so I've gotten to a point now to where in a 10-minute video, I'm probably working an hour and a half to 2 hours on it, which at first was maybe 4 or 5 hours because I was just getting in a routine, trying to figure out what this looks like. But now I've gotten down to just, I mean, it's almost...
You know what he wants.
It's muscle memory. I know what he wants, and we're on the same page now because we've been working together for 2 years now. So it's, I think now we're at a good flow. So,
do you like that? For me, I don't like doing the same thing every day. Like I've got a restaurant in Kannapolis that I built all the tables for. And I can't imagine doing that every day. And, and obviously the footage and the stuff is not the same.
I think because the footage is different, and like he's always doing something different every day, it just feels different. And I think it helps, in a way it helps to, like if I have something to do, and like I have 2 things to do. I've got to edit Justin's vlog, and then I have to edit a client's video that I did. I'm more likely to do his vlog first because it's muscle memory.
You know what it is.
I know what it is. I don't have to think too hard, and I can just knock it out. When I have to sit down and do a different client's video, it takes more just mental energy.
You have to be in the right mental headspace. And,
and so I like it. It doesn't necessarily feel like it's the same thing. And so, so it's fun.
And I've got other friends who make content, like edit for... like my friend Taylor Martin does knives. Best Damn EDC. He's got a big following, and he's got Ricky who like edits and shoots all of his footage. And Ricky's done a lot of great like other YouTubers, and it's just it's a world that I didn't know existed until really either you or him, and probably in the last year, it was like, okay, a lot of them are editing their own footage, and maybe they get to 100,000 subscribers or whatever that point is, and they're like, okay, now we can afford to have someone come in so I can concentrate on which is
it's a whole nother, like there's the YouTube itself is just a whole economy. But you've got the people that have the channels and are the creators, but then you've got the whole behind the scenes industry of YouTube, that's the editors. And I mean that itself is a huge business. I had asked Justin, obviously he's got 1 million subscribers, so he's got his foot in the game. And so I'd asked him, I was like, I mean, should I do a channel? Like, 'cause I thought it'd be fun. Like, and I've always wanted to do something like that. So I asked him, he's like, yeah, I mean, you've got the time, right? And I was like, yeah. I was like, well, just do it. I mean,
just kind of like, to me, that's my approach to business, is just like saying yes to things.
Right, yeah.
And like people ask, was this a goal? And like, I don't know, it just kind of happened, and I just started doing it. There wasn't this, once I get A, B, and C set up, then I'm gonna do it. And
well, I think that's where a lot of people get hung up. Is like they think they've got to know all these things, or they've got to have certain tools to get started. Where it's like, just do it. Like that's really as simple as it is. Just do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But so speaking of that, what was your like? I mean, when you got into wood, obviously, I mean, you've got a lot of tools and stuff now. Yeah. But like, what'd you start off with?
This little skill saw.
Yeah.
And I had a sander. And I've never like taken out a loan. I've never gone in debt.
Yeah,
I've never, I started on my back patio, and for a year I was doing this, and it was one of I'm not having like conversations with my wife like, what's the business plan?
Right.
It was just, we're making things.
Yeah.
People are buying them. People seem to like them. People are excited about them.
Yeah.
The one thing that really took off was, I don't even know if you can really see it, is that North Carolina. I grew up in Virginia. My wife grew up here in North Carolina. And I took a picture of, I made them and we put them next to the front door. We have like a window in the front door, and there was this like 24-inch just like random space. So I put Virginia and a North Carolina, took a picture, and people lost their minds.
Really?
And like I bought the jigsaw, which is just a saw with a blade coming down from it.
Yeah.
And I made those, and I mean I sold probably around 500 of them at $30 a piece.
Wow.
And I mean that was the first thing that just kind of took off.
Yeah.
And I couldn't make enough of them.
Yeah.
And I was just making them out of like pine from Lowe's.
Yeah.
And so I went to Lowe's and I'd buy, and I was driving a Toyota Corolla. So I could get 8-foot pieces, like scooted all the way through the Corolla with the seats down in the back. I mean, just like.
Were you able to close the trunk? Or
yeah. And I mean, and I'd, drive back, and, you catch the eyes of the people around and like, is that guy putting in? And I still I saw a guy yesterday with a Kia Sorento, and he's full of lumber. Yeah. I was like, do you, man?
Right. Yeah. Use what you got.
Yeah. And that was the first thing that really not went viral, but was the biggest sale.
Yeah. And, so did you ever have a low point in your career that you were struggling? Obviously you talked from the beginning was hard, but even like while like being married, and because I know for me and Ashley, obviously the beginning was pretty rough. I mean, like we were behind on bills, credit cards were built up, like we were struggling. Yeah. And we had bought a car that we couldn't actually afford, but there was a point where like, I mean, I had to do something different and like get out of that, right? Yeah. Well, did you ever have a point like that? And like, what did you do to get out of it?
I mean, I remember our anniversary is in February, and we went to Charleston, and we had several bills come due, and I had like $700 in my bank account. Yeah. Well, the bills were like $680. Right. So I literally had $25 left, and that was it. Yeah. And we're in Charleston. And I'm supposed to be, paying for things and enjoying myself, and I had jobs and I had things that I really didn't care for, and I built cell phone towers for a while, and I was still taking pictures, but you would have a really big thing or like project with a big company and do well, and then taxes and everything came due, and the money's gone. Right. And so there were many times before woodworking that I had no money. Mm-hmm. And, you're trying to, just get by and make things and take pictures and be like, hey, we should go, let me go outside and, go downtown and, the sunset's really nice. I'll take some photos, you'll post them. And they really didn't equate to, likes don't pay bills. Right. And
you start to get creative, though. You start to think, like, when you're in that situation, you get creative.
And so when I started woodworking, not that I've been, incredibly successful and, we're buying new cars, but, like, for the first time in my life, like, it was consistent.
Yeah.
And even if it was slow, I mean, you look around the shop and there's nothing, none of the wood in here is earmarked for a specific project.
Yeah.
I can make, cutting boards, or I can make chessboards, or I can make, small trays, and then post it and sell it, and that's income just immediately.
Yeah.
And that's from stuff that really doesn't have a, maybe it cost me money, maybe someone gave it to me, maybe it was part of another project where I've got this left over.
Yeah.
And over the years I've realized that if I'm working on a large project, there's small pieces that go with it that they're not trash.
Right.
And I can make things out of them, and it's and you make content out of it, and I had a video, the only video that I've ever really had that went like viral. It has like almost 1 million views.
Sweet.
And I was standing right here, and I love working with whiskey barrel.
Yeah.
And I always have whiskey barrel. There's actually a whole whiskey barrel underneath here. You can kind of see it. And so I get this whiskey barrel, and a buddy of mine got it in Kentucky and drove it back. And I put it right here and lit it on fire.
Yeah.
And because it was like soaking wet with whiskey.
Uh-huh.
And I put my camera right here. I lit it up.
Yeah.
And I thought it was funny. I was like, oh, man, I'll put it on my story. And I showed it to another friend, my friend Joe Huff, who owns a leather company here in Concord. And he was like, bro, this is funny. Like, you need to post this.
Yeah.
And because, like, I couldn't blow it out, and it kept, like, I would blow it, and the fire would go over here. So I came over here, and the fire would go over here. And finally, I got it out. And it was the biggest video I've ever done.
Yeah.
And as you're trying to chase that.
Right.
Like, I want to make that video every day if I could.
Yeah.
And that was just one of those things that just kind of stumbled on. I wish I could, figure out the algorithm. And, I've made other videos with, 15 or 20,000 views, stuff like that, but not.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. It's always just could be the most random thing. It just takes off.
I made a video about, I was on my way home and I got behind a Mazda Miata, and it had a trailer hitch.
Okay.
And I was like, I was like, what is going on? Like, who's pulling a trailer in a Mazda Miata? Like, they're great cars. I'm not ditching. And then, like, I start sharing, like, photos in this video, and it was the only video I ever got that I got hate from.
Really?
Like,
why?
Stupid Americans, you can pull a trailer with, some guy and who knows where.
Yeah.
But, it got a whole bunch of views, and I was like, and it had nothing to do with woodworking.
Right. Yeah.
Like, I can make a silly video and get some views and some likes, but not always, woodworking related. And I don't want to teach, that's one of those things that a lot of woodworkers do, is they're just like, hey, here's this ash that I have, and we're going to take this ash and we're going to build a, stool today. And, this is how I, the joints that I'm using, and this is the glue, and this is,
Yeah, that's not the route you want to go.
No, it's the right way for them.
Right, yeah.
It's just not what I want to do.
Yeah, no, I get that.
Yeah.
So did friends ever play a part in your business? And why I asked that, for me, it always felt like friends were just trying to get a deal. Like, they knew that, obviously some friends helped me with my business. They were supportive.
Yeah.
But it seemed, because you can have this mindset of, when you're starting your business, all right, your friends are going to be the ones that are going to be kind of help push you along and get you started until you actually find your clientele. Yeah. But for me, it didn't always feel that way necessarily, because it felt like people were just, hey man, like, can you just, like, will you have your camera on you? Like, can you just grab a photo? Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. Or a video. Like, but did friends play a big part in your business going?
They're both sides of it.
Yeah.
The good and the bad. Like, how much is that table? Like, oh, for you, I'll do 600.
Right.
And for someone else, you would have done, 1,000 or, what.
Yeah.
But there were just as many people who they were my first customers.
Yeah.
You know, people that, you know, hey, you know, maybe someone from church, maybe it was, you know, someone I knew on social media, and, you know, I couldn't have started if it wasn't for those people.
Yeah.
My wife always tells me, my mom in Virginia, you know, my parents live in a very affluent area of Northern Virginia, and so I'll post a picture of a table I made, and she'd be like, how much did you charge for that? I'm like, oh, it was, you know, $700. Are you kidding? I would have sold that for $750.
Yeah.
Like, well, you know, I would have liked to, but I don't think anyone would. And it's not that, you know, Concord is or, you know, Charlotte or, you know, the surrounding areas are poor and without, you know, resources.
Right.
But, you know, you can stand on principles and not make any money. And there were a lot of times where personally I gave people deals.
Yeah.
Maybe to make a project, maybe to, for me, the experience was as important as making the money.
Yeah.
And being able to work with this wood, or, you know, like there was a guy on the south side or the north side of Concord that I found out was selling these offcuts of slabs, like really like monkey pod. I mean, stuff that I'd never heard of. And I was like, oh, so I go over and, you know, I picked some pieces and it was $300. And then he had all of this wood laid out. And he was like, well, if you're interested, this is the oldest red hickory tree in the world. And I was like, all right, bud. Thanks.
Yeah.
I was born in the morning, but not this morning. And he was like, no. And he shows me this magazine from the North Carolina like forestry, and it was a red hickory tree. It was dated 250 years old. It was from Taylorsville, North Carolina. I was just like, it was owned by, you know, this guy, and it was struck by lightning 4 times, so it started to rot in the middle because water had started to get in, so they took the tree down, and this is it right here.
So it was legit.
And I was like, and he was like, usually I do $14 a board foot, which is, that would be $5,000 for the amount of wood that he had.
Yeah.
And I was like, I couldn't do that.
Right.
And he's trying to get rid of it. Yeah. So I bought like 10 pieces for $900, which was a steal.
Okay.
And I brought them, I took photos, and they just stayed in here. I didn't know what to do with them.
Yeah.
And then it was 9 months, a year later, a friend from that I have contacted me and was like, hey, do you have anything cool? And I was like, yeah, I got this hickory. He was like, can we come see it? And I was like, yeah, I guess. And I made 2 conference tables for the Speedway, and then another office owned by like Marcus Smith, who owns Charlotte Motor Speedway. And they loved the story attached to it. So I made these really cool, you know, big like 9-foot conference tables, and, you know, made good money, and had, you know, but, you know, just like the restaurant I finished in Kannapolis, Towel City Tavern, I bought this whole tree and didn't have a plan for it, and, you know, sticked it and stacked it out here, and it dried for 3 years. Yeah. And then they show up and they were like, hey, we'd like for you to build these tables. And I was like, whoa, what if we made them all out of one tree? Yeah. And they were like, yeah, let's do that. Cool. And I, like, when I got that tree, I had no idea that that's what it was going to turn into. And just like those, I had no idea I'd have a conference table made out of wood at the Speedway. And, you know, it's just these things that, and not everything's as, you know, romantic or has a story attached to it. But.
So how do you go about pricing yourself? Like, that was always, I still have troubles with that now. Because it's like, you feel, sometimes you get, you know, a gig, and let's just say I charge, maybe I try to overcharge somebody because I don't want to do it. Yeah. You know, I'm like,
and then they agree to it.
And then they agree to it, and you're like, well, wait, how much more could I have charged? You know what I mean? So like, $4,000 for one thing, somebody might think is a great deal.
Yeah.
But then for somebody else, is like, oh man, that's just way too much. So like, it's a tough
It's what
game.
people value, yeah.
Right. It's a tough game to like.
And if it's corporate, then they're just writing checks.
Right.
And they don't care.
Well, that's what. If it's something corporate, I tend to like it.
Because I've had corporate stuff in woodworking that they were like.
Right. Yeah.
Like, oh yeah.
Yeah.
Like, okay.
But then you're like, well, how much? Like, because sometimes you could like double.
Are we talking 10%? Are we talking 50%? Are we talking double?
Right.
And yeah, so for a table, it's you double the cost of the wood.
Okay.
So if the wood costs you $400, you have an $800 table.
Okay.
But then you have stuff like this, and I know I keep pointing to something that no one can see.
Yeah.
But I bought this whole stack of wood last week, or on Saturday, for $600, which is, a lot of money in one, especially since I don't have it's not going anywhere yet.
Right, yeah.
It doesn't have, it's not earmarked for a certain project.
Yeah.
But I'll make
Yeah. It's an investment, really.
I'll definitely more than double that. Like that's not $1,200 worth of, that's probably $5,000-$6,000 worth of, sales right there, or more, depending on what it is. And it's hard because, like I said earlier, about say I have a large project and then I get these pieces that are, a foot, 2 feet.
Yeah.
How much do I charge for that piece?
Right.
When I know you already paid for that wood. You've got your table, you've got your piece, you're happy with it, it's moved on.
Yeah.
I've got this wood now, and you just kind of have to, and it sucks, because you just kind of have to figure it out.
Right.
Like back here, you see a little stack of wood, little cocktail smokers. And literally, you put wood chips in it, you introduce a flame to it, it forces smoke down, you have a smoked cocktail.
Right.
And I was like, what are those?
Right.
And I sold probably 250 of those over, 6 months.
Wow.
And I mean, this whole workbench was completely covered with blocks.
Yeah.
And I would buy lumber, and if I had doubled the cost, they would be $6. Something.
Right.
And it wouldn't be worth your time.
Right. Exactly.
And so you have to figure out time.
Yeah.
You have resources. You have to, and because not everything is going to be able to go. You can't double everything. Sometimes you have to triple or quadruple, and it's just case by case.
Yeah. So what's that one thing that, like, if you make it, it's going to sell, or it just sells like hotcakes?
It changes.
Yeah.
Like those North Carolina plaques that I made.
Yeah.
I'll sell 10 of them a year now. Where at first I was selling.
Okay.
I could make 100 of them and they'd be sold out in 3 days.
Yeah. Yeah.
And maybe it's, I can post something and sell it immediately if I'm excited about it.
Yeah.
But then, I'll move on. And, for a while I was selling those things. I was selling, these are sourdough bread knives. And so you literally put a blade on here and then you cut. So like I got set up with a girl who does sourdough classes. So she sells these for me, and so like this one's olive wood, which is one of my favorite woods, and every year and every Christmas season, it's a different thing, and that's the most stressful part about my job is figuring out what's going to be next year's thing. Is it going to be the cocktail smoker? Is it going to be something bigger like chessboards? Is it going to be? I mean, I hate making cutting boards now.
Really?
Because everyone makes them, and you show up to a market or something.
That's the one thing you see at like a market is like just a bunch of.
And I don't want to make them.
Yeah.
I want to figure out that other thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I made ashtrays for a while. They did really well.
Yeah.
I did whiskey cups, like solid wood. Turned them. Those did really well for a couple seasons. The smaller things that you can give to your dad or you can give to, a coworker. Yeah. It's like $30 and under.
Right.
And because some businesses, like you as an employer, you can't give a gift over $40 or $50. And I know real estate is that as well. Like you can't, the gift can't be more than this. And so I've had a lot of real estate agents that I've made, cutting boards or, and like branding irons, and we'll brand their logo on them. And it's just, if you ever have any ideas. Because my wife is usually the one who has the ideas, because I feel like I'm too close to it and I'm too in it. And then someone who's kind of a step back from it is the one that, like, you should make this.
Right.
Sometimes they're terrible. Not her ideas, but like people will send me something on social media and be like, I think you should make this. And then it's awful.
Have you ever thought of like metalwork?
Yeah.
It seems somewhat, I mean, it's obviously different.
I couldn't do it in here because I'd probably burn the place down.
Okay.
I mean, you look around and you just think about this is not a... Okay.
It just seems like it might relate.
Especially in like table bases and, making lamps and making, things that are kind of woodworking adjacent. And maybe in a spot one day I would. It's...
Well, what do you, like, what's your future? What do you see? Like, are you just running with doing, I don't know, what you're doing now? Is it, is woodworking what you want to do forever? What's like your 10-year plan?
To continue doing it and continue making things and, and like I said, this is not something you ever master. Right. And if anyone ever says they've mastered woodworking, they're lying.
Right. Well, that makes it fun.
Yeah. And it also makes it terrible. Because like I always say, my favorite days are like figuring out a project. But in the moment, that's super frustrating. Like I got a book, and maybe I'll regret saying this, yesterday about building a canoe.
Okay.
And like to me that sounds awesome and romantic and very like Ron Swanson, Nick Offerman. Like, hey, let's build your own canoe. The book was a lot bigger than I expected it to be. like where you're looking at it, you're like,
well, you think like it can't be that hard. Like, I mean, it's just a...
That's what I thought. And I get this book and it is substantial. And I was like, what in the world is this? It's fine.
Well, is it... Because I think I've seen a video of somebody doing that where... And it was very like hands-on. They basically cut down a big old tree. They got to find the perfect tree first. And then like cut it in half and they start like catching it on fire in the middle or something.
Well, that's like the Native American way of making. Was it the Eskimos, I want to say, that did that? And that, would like...
Right, and just, I mean, that takes time, I'm sure.
That sounds awful.
Are you a power tool kind of guy, or are you a more traditional, like, hand tools and romanticized,
was it the new Yankee Workshop? You've probably seen it on like PBS and or stumbled upon it and then kept on going.
Right, kept going.
He does everything out of hand tools.
Okay.
And there's a romance to that, and there's this beautiful, to be able to chisel this, joint and to hand saw.
Right. It looks great on
But then that table that should cost $1,000 is now $5,000 because you hand sawing every single piece of this. And I make everything by hand in a sense with the help of power tools. But now we live in a world, and like I've got a good friend who he's all about the CNC. He's all about the laser cutter. He's all about the technology around woodworking. And in a lot of ways, I'm not the first guy of hand tools and drilling out by hand, but making it by hand in the sense of I didn't laser cut, I didn't engrave, I didn't cut out with a CNC and then kind of piece it together. And
it's still handmade. It's just your tools are upgraded.
And I mean, like, the amount of tools that I have, and you know, I'd love to be able to say that I hand sanded something, but the drum sander and the belt sander and the palm sander, and you know, to cut the stuff with the miter saw, or to, you know, cut it out with the band saw, or, you know, these make things a lot easier, and you know, you make things a lot better. You know, I didn't have these tools at first. And you know, the tables weren't as tight. It wasn't as well put together as they are now because of the tools that I have.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right, well, maybe let's wrap up with this, or any more thoughts that you might have. But like, what would you advise for the younger kid? Maybe he's getting ready to go into college, or at least that's the path that people are telling him to do. But he wants to live that. I mean, he's just a younger you, wants to live a more entrepreneurial lifestyle. What's your advice to that kid? Should he go to college? Is that a route that you should go to? What would you tell that kid?
You know, I'd say in a lot of ways, just, you know, if you want to do something, just do it. Don't wait for, you know, things to be perfectly in place and to have, you know, $10,000 in the bank before I start this pursuit, or have, you know, this rig or this tool or this. Trade schools are awesome. You know, we were talking off camera about Mike Rowe and Mike Rowe Works, that does awesome things for people, not just, you know, welders and pipe fitters, but cosmetology and, you know, esthetology and esthetology? No. What's the skin? Esthetician.
I've never heard of that.
Yeah. So he does scholarships for these people, and if I could do it all over, I don't know. You know, that's tough, because everything the path that I took, and the path that I, you know, through college and through struggling, led me to where I am today. And so you wouldn't be Austin if it weren't for that year and a half of college, if it weren't for those, you know, lean years of, you know, shooting and, you know, volunteering your work just to be able to make content.
That's true.
And you wouldn't be that person, but how do you lead you know, the next generation, and be like, that's tough, because
and it's like, you're not going to, well, hey, just go struggle for a little bit, you know?
and you want to tell them, because I grew up in a house, and you know, my parents have done well for themselves, and they were not blue collar, they were not makers, they were not people who, and they, you know, it took a while for them to kind of get behind me, but you know, maybe it is taking a different path. And maybe it is welding, or maybe it is going to, because Charlotte has, you know, CPCC, and Concord has RCC, and they have these community colleges, and maybe you want to do HVA tech. And even today, like, I love woodworking, and I love coming in here, but I also have other things that I pursue. And I work at a used car lot 2 days a week. And some days I'm making more here, some days I'm making more there. And I'm still taking photos, and I love pursuing multiple things. And it's just that entrepreneurial spirit of, don't tell me what to do, don't tell me that I can't, you know, do multiple things.
That's the great thing about being an entrepreneur, is you can, like, you have that ability to just do whatever you want, you know what I mean? Like,
and if I don't want to work on, you know, Monday, I'll go home.
Exactly.
I'm not going to make any money.
Right.
And as an entrepreneur, you know this, when you got that really big, you know, and I'm sure we both have that one job or that one gig that we can look back on and be like, I made $10,000 doing that, or I made $5,000, whatever the biggest kind of project was that you did. It's hard to motivate yourself after that check is cleared, because you're just like, I don't really want to do anything today, because
because there's money in the bank.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you have to think about, when those bills come due and, that next thing. And you have to, because there's no one behind you. And you and I both have wives that you'd be like, you need to go work.
Right.
But no one else is telling you to go and do something.
Yeah.
Like, you just have to go and do it.
Yeah. What is your, motivation? Because for me, well, right now, obviously, having a kid, that pushes you along a little bit, But even with, before that, I mean, it was just me and my wife. And, your wife is a motivator. You want to support her. But at the same time, I don't even know that was enough to really, get me out of bed sometimes, because you're just and especially after you've struggled a little bit together, you're just well, we'll just struggle together and we'll be fine, But
or you're okay with a little bit.
Yeah, right,
and you're okay with making just enough.
Right. But what's your why?
Creativity.
Okay.
From 2011 until 2014, I worked out hard, and I lost a bunch of weight.
Yeah.
I lifted, I ran, I was in the best shape of my life, and that was my daily pursuit. Was I needed that to feel there was an accomplishment that day. And then I started woodworking, and and stopped working out because that was that accomplishment that I needed.
Yeah.
And there's a creative, if you go a couple days without being creative, to me, it's suffocating.
Yeah.
I feel like I haven't done anything.
Right.
Why am I it's just, I feel drained. I feel, especially at the car lot, I'll be there for, 3-4 days in a row. And then I'm just I need to make something.
Right.
I need to draw something. I need to be creative in some way. And so what I've learned is it's not the money. It's not the, it's not Allison. It's the desire to just make something and be creative. And, and it's just for me.
Yeah. That's good.
So.
That's good. Well, any parting thoughts?
I love wood.
I love wood. That's good.